Hello, and welcome to the Vicars Watch Dibley,
the podcast where real priests talk about pop culture and what we've learned about faith, life, and the church. We've watched Dibley, now we're watching everything else. I'm Cate.
I'm Ross.
And I'm Ruthi. This episode we're talking about Hallmark Christmas movies and those cheesy cliched rom-coms that come out around Christmas where you predict exactly what's happening. And we're going to compare it talking about liturgy and its familiarity and coziness.
Well, a holy happy hello to you all.
Hello!
We're in our vicarages and you're listening in. We're ready and raring to talk about Hallmark movies today. But first, we've got a couple of notices. First of all, Cate, do you want to talk to us a little bit about our special Christmas carol service extravaganza?
Thing, yes. So we mentioned this in the episode about Muppet Christmas Carol. Now we've got a bit more of a solid plan. Coming out on the 22nd of December. Unfortunately, only on Spotify. But I'm sure people can listen in on their less preferred podcasting app if you listen to us anywhere else. We are doing a sort of alternative Christmas carol service podcast. We'll come up with some snappy name for it. We've got some contributions from our dear friends Cate Botley and Dawn French and Jenny again, and we're really excited to share some slightly different Christmas music that you might be less familiar with and spend some time celebrating and preparing for Christmas in worship and prayer.
What date is that going to go live, Cate?
The 22nd of December.
So if you're somebody who puts up your Christmas tree late, you can even listen to our service whilst you decorate your home. But I think most of us are probably early Christmas decorators. We'll find out. Well, Ruthi, you are in your brand new home and you're a brand new vicar. How's that going?
What people say about it being curate to newly qualified teacher is immensely true because it's a massive step up in responsibility and all this kind of stuff, and I feel a bit like a headless chicken running around but loving it and having such a good time, and there's been interesting things that have happened, but I'm having a really good time, so it's really confirmed that this is the right place to be, and Hebden Bridge and Hepton Stall are wicked places to be. So very happy.
Oh, yeah. Can't wait to come and see where you're at.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah. So, shall we talk about what we've decided to talk about today?
Yeah.
Which is heavily influenced by me. I asked to do about Hallmark Christmas movies, which are a niche love of mine. I think they're a bit like Marmite. Some people love them, some people hate them, but I want to talk about them because I think they link quite well to something in the church. Ross, you've seen Hallmark movies before.
In the first instance, Ruthi, can you tell us what a Hallmark movie is?
Oh, yeah, of course. So they are your kind of classic Christmas rom-com. On the cheaper end of the budget, you may see people in there that actors that you might recognise from things. You go, oh my gosh, it's... they're fairly predictable. It's the way the plot line goes. But there's something quite about it that I just love. And I believe, Ross, you've watched these kind of films before, but Cate, this is new for you.
Not necessarily new, but not something I enjoy. It's not something I choose to do. Let's put it that way. So I have seen snippets of these sorts of movies before, and quite often I turn them off fairly quickly because I'm just not that. They just don't speak to me. But let's say that diplomatically.
When I had Netflix, I watched a couple of the ones on there, and they were sort of harmless, good fun, and But I am not a Hallmark movie aficionado by any means, and the exercise of finding new ones to watch was fascinating, and I can't wait to get into it.
You sent us a voice note, didn't you, of ones that you could have possibly watched?
Well, so I logged onto ITVX and I typed in Christmas and I scrolled through and, really fascinating.
Yeah, I can sort of see it as a sort of thing that if I got into them, I'd put them on in the background while I was doing something else that required quite a lot of concentration. Because for me, I mean, I think I said in a Barbie episode, I really struggle at the moment with sustaining my concentration to get through just a normal movie that I quite like. So, my attention drifted quite substantially during the Hallmark movie. But I can imagine that sort of in the background. It's, it's Christmassy and you got gentle Christmas music for the occasional dramatic burst.
Okay, cool. So, did we all watch different films in different places? There's some on Netflix and ITV and My5. And
I think I was on My5, yeah.
The Netflix ones always seem to be a bit of a higher quality ones. That's not what we're after for this. So
yeah, for sure.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you watched?
So I opted to go first with Back to Christmas, which is a play on Back to the Future. And there's a bit of time travel.
No way.
Yeah. So that was it was kind of everything that you would expect from your cheesy, corny Hallmark movie. The second one I watched was The Christmas Shepherd. And I chose that one because I thought, oh, well, shepherds are there in the Christmas story, so maybe there's something biblical going on. Maybe there'll even be a vicar. I don't know. But I could not have been more wrong. It was The Christmas Shepherd is all about a German shepherd dog. And I'll tell you this for now, Cate and Ruthi, and all you lovely listeners out there. It had no right to go as hard as it did. And it was actually wonderful. I loved it. We'll get into it later, maybe. But actually, it was a really stonkingly good movie. And I had a really great time.
Oh, gonna have to watch that one then.
Yeah, it's really cute.
You watched a dog movie and enjoyed it, Ross.
I did. Yeah, I would usually avoid dog movies, kind of like the plague, but no, this one was gorgeous.
Amazing. What about you, Kate? What did you watch?
Right, so I watched a movie called A Heavenly Christmas, chosen because, again, the sort of title where you think maybe there'll be religious themes in this, maybe there'll be a vicar. It's got, and also it had some recognisable actors. So it had Charlotte from Sex and the City. She was a female lead. And Will from Will and Grace, who was a male lead.
Oh, wow.
So I thought, well, we've got two actors who I've seen, they're quite good actors, so surely this is going to be a well-acted production.
Well, of course.
Maybe not. I think maybe they were in a genre of a type of movie. Anyway, it's about the female lead who is in finance and wears black and doesn't have time for Christmas. She trips and falls on the ice and ends up in heaven and has to become a Christmas angel to go and help the male lead who is a musician but was in a partnership with his sister. When his sister died, he became a chef in a diner instead. And obviously it's about them falling in love and her not actually being dead. She was just in a coma.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah.
New life.
I've got notes on it, but I'm sure we might get into it. But
I watched quite a few.
Yeah.
I'll talk about two. I watched Christmas on Mistletoe Farm, which was with cowboys and ranching and a girl with big city job coming back home and realising it needed rescuing and all that stuff.
Got to rescue the farm.
This one does have a vicar in it, which was bonkers. And I didn't know there was one, and she just appeared in a dog collar, and it was just amazing. So, there was one. Then the other one was, and on My5 it was called A Very Merry British Christmas, but having looked at it online, there were different names for it. It was about someone who's an architect from New York, and he's come to London to do a new job, and a girlfriend. He's got this girlfriend, and he doesn't know what to buy for her, and he decides to go for a gift card, and it's the worst present apparently you can buy for anyone. And then he bumps into a personal shopper, and they go on a Christmas adventure together to try and find the perfect gift for his 3-month girlfriend, who he doesn't know what to buy for. So yeah, it was all a bit, yeah, we're British and all this kind of stuff.
Okay, so you've brought us these Hallmark movies to watch, and but why are we watching Hallmark? I mean, it's Christmas, so that's nice. But Ruthie, why would you torment poor Cate to this genre?
Because I think there's a similarity between Hallmark Christmas movies and, well, it works for rom-coms in general, but also, especially with Christmas ones, that there's this link between that and liturgy, and there's a format and a formula to it, and there's this, liturgy are the words we say that give the structure to our services, and in the same way Hallmark movies have kind of a system. So I wanted to talk about those two together.
Okay, so in terms of liturgy, there are things that you would usually spot when you go to a church service,
yes.
And in a Hallmark movie, there are things that you would usually expect from a Hallmark movie, lots of different tropes and that kind of thing.
Yes.
And I understand that you've got a bit of a game for us.
I want us to imagine a bingo card. Maybe I'll create one for social media. There are many more, but I've just added a few of the tropes that you would hear in one of these kind of films. Okay. And I wanted to know if the films that you watched had these specific tropes. So, were any of the films you watched set in a small town, normally in America, often with snow and ice and that kind of thing?
No, mine was
bingo, yeah, both.
Chicago, okay. That is also quite cheesy and classic. Did anyone wear flannel shirts in yours?
Yeah.
Yeah, my coffee barista in The Christmas Shepherd wore flannel.
Yeah, I had flannel too. Did the female character in yours, sometimes the male, but more often the female, have some kind of big city corporate job?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
In the first one, in the Back to Christmas, she worked in the city. Yeah.
Yeah, and mine started out the movie trying to get a promotion, but by the end of the movie, no longer wanted that promotion.
Yeah. There's a meme going around. Did any of you see it?
It's
wanting
cringe.
to big city job girls who are going home for Christmas, beware of men in flannel shirts who want you to give up your job for a mediocre life in a small town. Yeah. So tick. Did you have either dopey ex-boyfriends who didn't understand emotions, or a mean ex-girlfriend, or they become an ex during the film?
I didn't.
Ooh.
But
you didn't have any exes?
No, so in the Christmas Shepherd, they were both widowers. They were both widowers, so there was a widow and a widower. So there were no exes in that regard. And then there was a mean ex in Back to Christmas.
Yeah.
But then when she went back in time, she was with him again, and it was their last Christmas. So so she was seeing her current boyfriend then in a new light.
Right. Okay.
So there is a mean ex who doesn't really get her. And they had a whole thing about, you don't want children, you don't want to get married, this was news kind of thing.
Whereas I didn't have a mean ex. What we did have, the kind of antagonist-ish, was the male lead was looking after his niece.
Oh, okay.
Because her mum had passed away, and her grandparents wanted to take her to live in Florida. I know.
Not Florida.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's a good one. Death is a common trope as well.
That's interesting. Did you have that?
Yeah, so we had an ex-boyfriend who challenged her career in the very British Christmas one, and in Mistletoe Farm, she was too obsessed with her job and didn't see the values. He realised that to dump her because because she didn't want to settle down and stuff. But then there was another ex who was the nice ex, who was the mother of his child, and they got on well and were pals and worked things out. So that was good. Was there a massive understanding that could have been solved by someone sending a text or just talked about something to sort it out? So in mine, for example, the girl saw the best friend that she did fancy, and they had been together, but then saw them with the mum and saw them all dancing together and was like, oh, they're supposed to be a family and all that stuff, not realising that that's not what they wanted to be.
Sort of, yes. So female lead becomes a Christmas angel, and she behaves very weirdly, and sometimes she disappears because her guardian angel guide occasionally spirits her up to heaven to have a talk or whatever, and the male lead thinks that she's rejected him when she's just been spirited away.
I didn't have so much a misunderstanding. There was a meddling mother who didn't tell her daughter that her high school best friend, who she grew up with, liked her. So she didn't pass that information on. He wanted to ask her out to the dance, but the mother said no and never really passed that on. So there was a bit of a misunderstanding. Of course, they end up together at the end. But it does occur to me, at this point, with this trope, it does make me think of our very own Geraldine Granger, who mistakes Keeley Hawes to be Richard Armitage's new girlfriend.
In their Christmas romance.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe Vicar of Dibley is a Hallmark movie.
Or at least that particular episode.
I've got 4 more. Was there a thing of we need to save a town or a farm or a festival or something that we all had to rally together and save it?
I didn't have that, actually.
Do you?
No. I mean,
what kind of movies
well, there was a little bit. So in The Christmas Shepherd, the father he'd set up this coffee business, and it wasn't doing very well because of the Starbucks down the road. But then he took Buddy, the German Shepherd, to work with him, who went and barked through the window, and then all of these Santas did come in, and suddenly there were customers, and so it wasn't the main thing of the movie, but there was a bit of a saving the barrister
there was a bit
coffee
of
shop.
Max
Kind of a deal.
when his sister was alive, won America's Got Talent, or the equivalent, but when she passed away, he stopped writing music and he stopped his music career, and they had to get him a place to perform at Christmas at the Palace, which was some Christmas Eve concert. So there was sort of a rallying in terms of getting him to write music again and helping him restore his dream career.
Yeah. We had to save the ranch on Mr. Farm because it was running out of money. And they'd cancelled the big Christmas party as part of it, but they were putting it back on and finding the money to save the farm and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
It's such a difficult time for local businesses and local farms in Hallmark movies. Such a tough time.
But thankfully, there is some shirtless ranchers who...
They're not wearing flannel.
Helped everything out. The flannel was gone at that point.
Wait, they're shirtless in winter? That's horrible.
Who had Santa in their film, or like a Santa character who mysteriously works behind the scenes.
Oh my goodness. So in Back to Christmas, there was this, I guess, angel figure, and she joined the female protagonist at the cafe, and they ended up swapping meals, but then she wasn't there and her meal wasn't there, and she kind of kept popping up, and it was really weird. She turned up on Christmas morning wearing a gorilla costume because she needed to tell the female protagonist, hey, you need to, this is your mystical message. It was weird. It was a little bit grating.
Yeah.
Heavenly Christmas had the guardian angel figure, who's the one who kind of orchestrated things so that she could fix both the female lead's life and a male lead's life before Christmas. So, yes.
Yeah. I had in a very British Christmas, the dad dressed up in the pub as Santa and handed out presents and stuff. We've touched on this already about famous actors in it, like Chad Michael Murray and Lacey. I can't remember her full name, but she played Gretchen Wieners in Mean Girls. She's in a lot of those as well. So you had Charlotte from Sex and the City, and Will from Will and Grace. Any other famous actors?
So, I'm pretty sure the woman who played the guardian angel is well known, but I couldn't work out where I recognised her from, and I didn't care enough. In a massive departure from form for me, I just didn't care enough to find out.
You were not on IMDb through the whole thing. I was on IMDb for mine. What was it? It was the bloke.
I forgot to IMDb mine, but apparently in the Christmas Shepherd, you've got Terry Polo, and she was in Meet the Parents and Meet the Fockers, and indeed Little Fockers. So I can tell you that much.
Yeah, so A Heavenly Christmas had Kristen Davis, who is Charlotte from Sex and the City, Eric McCormack, who is Will from Will and Grace, and then the Guardian Angel was played by Shirley MacLaine, who I recognised, but I wasn't quite sure what I recognised her from. She's in Still Magnolias.
Yeah, no, she's a classic Hollywood actress. Yeah, and she was, she is in, she guest stars in Downton Abbey as the mother of Lady.
And she's in Only Murders in the Building as well.
Yeah.
So, yes. So,
yes, she is. She's Bunny's mum.
Fairly decent names there, really.
Mine's slightly more niche. So this guy was talking, and I was like, I recognise your voice. And he knew who he is, and he was in Princess Diaries 2. He was the Lord or Duke or whatever it was who she was going to marry before she fell in love with.
Oh yeah, the
Chris
one
Pine.
who's supposed to be like
He's
Prince
British
William,
as well,
but not Prince William.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, I recognise you. And then, Princess Diaries 2. And yeah, before she fancies Chris Pine, he was there, yeah. And the last one, was there a gay best friend or someone who was not to give advice and often found drinking wine in various places?
Back to Christmas did have like a black best friend at the beginning of the movie, and then disappeared as soon as she went back in time. Good. The Christmas Shepherd, I think, was all white.
Yeah.
And there were no gay best friends. Oh no, that's falling down in my estimations. But
mine. My favourite characters were really two-dimensional, so they didn't. Although there were people around them, they didn't seem to have best friends. Mostly they developed about relationships with siblings, but the female lead was estranged from everyone.
Okay.
And the male lead, had his niece, so I guess she kind of filled that role.
Did you?
Both of mine had gay best friends, yeah. And there was wine drinking at various points as well. And yeah, I've just remembered. Saw a different one that was called The Christmas Princess. Of course I picked that one because it said princess. And the female lead in that was black. So finally some vague diversity in Hallmark films. Hallmark films. At least that's a start, I guess. There are many other tropes as part of it. If you have a look in social media, I will put up some tropes and I'm sure you can tell us others. They were just some of the ones I thought of.
Oh, nice one. Thank you.
Maybe you've seen these films before. Maybe you don't want to see them. Maybe I've spoilt them for you. But I went through that and thinking about the kind of tropes that there are in there that add familiarity to the film, so you know what kind of things are coming. So you know if it's the girl with the big city corporate job, she's going to go back home because something needs rescuing. She's going to be a high school sweetheart. She's going to be there's going to be tension to begin with, and they'll start to talk to each other and have to pull together for something, or they'll do some activity together, and then there'll be this misunderstanding, but then they'll realise that they love each other at the big Christmas party at the end of the film and probably kiss in the snow. There is familiarity to that I really like, and if I'm finding Christmas stressful or I'm just tired or whatever it is, I know what I'm getting from a film like that, so I can just relax into it and enjoy the film. And so I wanted to compare that with liturgy and the kind of structure that we have with services. So in the Church of England, we've got various books called Common Worship, or all these different kind of words and liturgy that structure services and tell us what to say and the order what to say it in. So there'll be a familiarity in the structure. So if you go to any church in the country, then you'll know what kind of structure there'll be. It'll be a welcome, you'll sing a hymn, you'll do a confession and that kind of thing. And I see those kind of similarities in these Hallmark Christmas films. So am I nuts, or do you see those similarities
Yeah, so
too?
I think the familiarity in liturgy is a really big thing, and it's one of the reasons we use it, especially for why we might still use versions of the service which maybe feel a little bit more out of date. So it's why we still use a Book of Common Prayer in some services, because they are familiar. And one thing I've definitely observed, so my grandmother, my mum's mum, had quite severe dementia before she passed away, and one of the things that she still had was remembering the prayers in a communion service. So when the curate brought home communion to her, she'd be able to say all the prayers, and that was familiar to her, and she was able to connect to worship. And that in hymns as well, with familiar words in hymns, and I recognise that in my own congregations as well, that there's something about the comfort in familiarity, and something about those words which are really inscribed in your heart because you've said them over and over and over again.
Quick little history lesson. So the Church of England, of which we three are members, was kind of founded upon our liturgy. During the Reformation and the establishment of the Church of England, Thomas Cranmer, the Archbishop of Canterbury, was tasked with creating what is we call today the Book of Common Prayer. And that's gone through various different versions over the last couple of 100 years, giving every Anglican priest in the land prayers to say for every possible service, even with a chart at the back about who can marry who.
Yeah, and even with prayers for blessing ships that are going off to war.
Yeah,
so it's got everything.
Absolutely. But then around the time of the millennium, a new set of resources were released, and they are called Common Worship, which Ruthi referred to earlier as well. So just for those of you who may be new to the Church of England or Anglicanism, when we talk about the Book of Common Prayer, that goes back a couple of 100 years to the founding of the Church of England. Common Worship is much more recent.
And the reason the word common is used, it's not about, those who can't read or whatever. It's the kind of common term, the common language that's used for people who are speaking now and that kind of thing. So it's accessible. It's not common as in it's not for posh people. It's common as in common language.
Yes, and it's also the prayers which we hold in common as well. Yeah, so it's familiar. And I think you're right that there is something when we compare that to Hallmark movies or those sort of romance movies, holiday movies that fit the trope, in that they are familiar, they're comfortable, they elicit that certain feeling and emotional response of, ooh, it's Christmas, right? And they're enjoyable, but not necessarily challenging. because of that. There may be conflict, but you know exactly what that conflict is going to be and how it's going to be resolved.
I think for me, sort of thinking about a Hallmark movie and also liturgy, I really have found times during my faith journey where I have just needed to go to an even song. So a service where the choir sing most of the responses and it's quite sort of more traditional language. But because it is still and because it's familiar and I can just let those words and that music wash over me and I don't have to work hard to engage, I can engage with it as much or as little as I like because it can happen around me rather than with my active participation.
And that sounds awful, doesn't it? That I just need to be held and... But I think it's a really important thing to do, and one of the things of like morning and evening prayer, the good thing about it is just words you know, and when you just can't do it today, God, you've got other people who've written words for you, and because I've got a to-do list this long, and it's just... My mind is full, but it just gets you in that mindset, and it's just like your favourite armchair, isn't it? You just are comfortable. I know what this is. I know these words, and it's just what I need right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's something about being held by others' prayers as well. So when you're using these set prayers, you know that hundreds, thousands of other people are using these exact same prayers. So if you're not fully able to be part of that, you know that you're being supported by other people. It's one of the reasons I love the Lord's Prayer so much, is because when we're praying it, we are connecting with nearly every Christian throughout history and across the world who are praying those same words. So it feels like, as you said, you're being held and supported by the prayers of others and by those familiar words. So if you can't find the words to say yourself, if you don't know what to pray, here are some rich words which are steeped in the Bible and steeped in theology, and people have spent a long time really thinking through what these words are and what they mean, and they're familiar, but they can still speak fresh to you. And I think it's one of those same things, like, we keep returning to a Vicar of Dibley, you know, and a lot of people during lockdown went back and rewatched The Vicar of Dibley, or another familiar TV show or comedy show. And why would you go back and watch something, particularly comedy, where you know what all the jokes are? Nothing's going to take you by surprise. Well, because it's that familiarity and it's comfortable, and it kind of brings you back to maybe what you felt when you first watched it, or but there's just something there. There's comfort in the familiar, not being comfortable in the sense of being stagnant, but comfort able. It comforts you.
I think as well, I mean, you mentioned the Lord's Prayer just now, and there are two versions of the Lord's Prayer that get used. There's a modern version, which we use in our Sunday worship, Our Father in Heaven, hallowed be your name. It cuts out all the these and thys, and it's sins rather than trespasses. But whenever I find myself doing a wedding or a funeral, I will revert back to using the traditional version, because actually that is the version of the prayer that is better known to, if you like, the people outside the church. They know the traditional words more than they know our attempts to modernize it. And I think that's a really interesting distinction. But we're also using that prayer at a time when people need something that is comfortable and familiar, and to use modern the modern Lord's Prayer would be jarring for people who, if it's a funeral, need comfort. Yeah,
and it reminds me a lot of when we were at college together. The deputy warden of Cranmer Hall was Cate Bruce, and I loved how she introduced the Lord's Prayer, and it's something I have adopted. And she would say, for those who will say no prayers today, and for those who do not know how to pray, as our Saviour taught us, so we pray. And I really love that idea of the Lord's Prayer holds us all together, whether we know how to pray, whether we don't, whether we have the words, whether we don't. I really love that.
It's why I'm really against singing it. And I know some churches do, but it's that familiarity of the prayer that people know it, and it's becoming less common. Less people know the Lord's Prayer in the same way that people used to. But actually, to take something that they might be able to access, they might not know anything else in the service, but this is the one thing they learn at primary school, to then set it to music, which is unfamiliar. I'm like, there's one thing. It just leave it be. And it's slightly true as well in the Methodist Church that the Lord's Prayer. So I was at the service of the Methodist Chapel in Hebden Bridge before I was licensed. And I think it got to the Lord's Prayer. It's like, oh, I know this. But there is a difference between the Methodist Lord's Prayer and the Anglican Lord's Prayer. So it's like, oh, wait, I don't know this one. So that's why I'm like, don't mess with the Lord's Prayer.
Do you ever find yourself switching between the traditional and modern translations of the Lord's Prayer? Because I do. I'll start in one and then find myself finishing in the other. Or there is a slight difference between the Book of Common Prayer version of the Lord's Prayer and what we call the traditional Lord's Prayer, or a version of it. Because the version I learned in choirs, in church choirs, was Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us our daily bread as we forgive them that trespass against us. And that's the one I learned as part of choirs. Whereas most people say as we forgive those who trespass against us.
Yeah.
And I find that it's really interesting.
Yeah. And there's two different versions in the Book of Common Prayer, because I say morning prayer, we're using the Book of Common Prayer on Wednesdays, and they don't do the end bit at the beginning, but they do the end bit later on. Or it's the other way around. Yeah,
and that's what the Catholics, it's called the doxology at the end. For the kingdom of power and the glory of yours. And that if you go to a service in a Catholic church, that they don't have the doxology, I understand.
Yeah. Not in the Bible.
My understanding of the reason why they don't have the doxology is because that isn't part of the biblical prayer that Jesus teaches us, but something added on.
Yeah, and for those of you who want to know the difference of the Methodist version, I think is it's lead us not through a time of trial instead of not lead us not into temptation.
Talking about the positives of the liturgy, we've talked about a lot of the positives of liturgy, but do you ever get frustrated with liturgy and just think, I don't want to do any of this, I just want to do something more creative and different?
I think liturgy handled poorly can feel clunky, can feel a bit like you're being buried in words. And sometimes, like, you're standing up and sitting down for no reason constantly. Like, you're just up and down. And I think particularly, is one thing I noticed when I was on placement and when we were training, and it was a baptism service, we had loads of guests, and there was just lots of, please stand, please sit, like, really close together. Definitely. And I thought, this must be really confusing if you're not used to this. Liturgy can be really helpful, but I mean, I know it's a danger for me because I really like liturgy and I like creating liturgy. Sometimes you get too caught up in saying, oh, this is clever, oh, this is fun. And then you sort of lose sight of there needs to be a flow, and it needs to be a gentle flow in liturgy. Yeah. Where sometimes it feels like you're being dragged along, or even you're being pulled back when you want to move ahead.
What about you, Russ?
I'm sort of weighing it all up in my head, really. Certainly there are times when I'm doing, say, a communion service, and it feels like a very long monologue. And sometimes if I'm doing a baptism and I'm doing the prayer over the water, I might be going through and thinking, are all these words necessary? Are people engaging, people listening? Does it matter if they're listening or not? And liturgy is all sorts of things, but it's storytelling. It's trying to tell that story of and take people from one place to another, and I find that exciting. But I've fallen out of love with creating liturgy. Actually, I tend to just use what's in the books at the moment. I find that really helpful. And I can be a perfectionist as well. So actually, keeping things simple means that I don't have to mess with things. But when I was in my curacy, my training incumbent was a liturgical magpie. He would bring in all sorts of things. You know, we'd have different creeds, we'd have different bits and pieces, and he found them from all around the world in different Anglican churches and put them in. And what was interesting was that sometimes that brought up debates at the church council about, our young people need to be rooted in and grounded in the familiar creeds and the familiar words of our church, instead of having something new and shiny week by week by week. So it was interesting to see that debate play out, and ultimately, I think if you've got a priest who loves to explore those different things and is good at and gifted at that, then actually they are to be encouraged in that, because it brings them life. And actually, at the moment, playing around with liturgy wouldn't bring me life; it would stress me out. And so, actually, a fairly bog standard service is what you're going to be getting. But and that's fine, because those words have been put together and crafted by experts who know the history of liturgy, who know their Bibles, and who know how to craft these services.
I think there's a danger, isn't there, with churches that use all their own liturgy that they've created, or all their own hymns and songs and worship that they put together, because you forget that kind of common tongue that we've talked about. You're not being influenced by others, you're not seeing difference, you're not being challenged, and I think there's a danger in that, who just do their own thing and they just miss out on other things.
Yeah, well, so one of my curacy churches, St Mark's Brumhill in Sheffield, was very well known for using some of our own created Eucharistic prayers and creeds, or finding kind of really interrogating our liturgy and making sure that it expressed what we believe, often drawing a lot on the iron resources as well from Wild Goose. But one of the things I talked about with my training incumbent at the time is we still kept to the form of common worship, and by that I mean the shape. And so if we were using an alternative preface to the Eucharistic prayer was still recognisable in structure as a common worship Eucharistic service.
It's the same titles, but have different.
Not everything was changed in a service. So you could go and you might say, "Oh, that's interesting, where's that prayer from?" But you wouldn't feel lost in the service. You'd know we were at the creed, or you'd know where we were and what was happening. And I really enjoyed, and there really was intense deliberation over the prayers that were being used, and if we were using something new, it was really thought about. What is this language saying? And if something was changed, you understood why. So, for example, in the Sanctus, the Holy, Holy, Holy in Communion, they used God of Truth and Love instead of God of Power and Might. And you can understand, you understood why they'd chosen that, because it fit with what the theology and ethos of the church was.
And that's why I put the two together, because I just think there is something in familiarity and structure. And in both, your classic Christmas rom-coms and your services way.
I think there's something as well about rules, though. There are rules to a Hallmark movie, and there are rules to liturgy. And once you know the rules, you know which ones you can break and how to break them, and to create something that is fresh or different. And I think that's one of the exciting things about both things, Hallmark and liturgy, that actually they can transport us, but they can also surprise us in how they do that.
They need it for challenge, but not always.
And also Christmas, because when we celebrate Christmas, often in our families, we have certain ways that we celebrate Christmas. We have certain films we watch, certain music we listen to, certain events we go to, certain services we go to, and you might feel, oh, it's Christmas again, got to go through the whole routine of doing crib service, midnight mass, Christmas morning service, and you'd think it would get boring, but it really doesn't. It's how we connect with what we're doing at this time of year and celebrating the feast of Jesus' birth.
That's what I'm finding really interesting, coming to a new place, what those bits of liturgy are, and trying to work out what people have done before with services and the liturgy, and it's piecing all the bits together, because there's bits before kind of COVID and stuff, and how was that, and then after COVID, and this now, and I'm just trying to piece all that together.
And not realising how different that is from community to community, from family to family, and I'm sure listeners, like you all, know what feels like Christmas to you. Like right at the start we mentioned whether it's time to start decorating for Christmas, right? Are you one of those families that decorates right before Christmas, or do you start way like in November? My family, we only started decorating on the last day of school term. That was when we were allowed to start decorating the house and putting up the trees. I think mostly because my mum was stressed and overwhelmed with 4 children, and my dad was really busy with church, and that's just how they handled it and gave us structure as children. But it's interesting. So I wonder, listeners, what is your liturgy of Christmas and the Christmas season? What is the order that you do things in? What sort of things do you do? How are they expressed maybe uniquely in your household? Where have you come into contact with other ways of doing things that have really shocked you or felt weird? Like, even down to what you eat on Christmas Day in different communities and different families can vary really, really drastically. Like, in the UK, it's either turkey or goose, sometimes chicken. Traditionally, it would have been goose, but it's now more turkey. But some people do pork or ham, I suppose.
Not in this vegetarian household.
Or if you're vegetarian, a nut roast maybe.
We had a sprout pie one year, and it was amazing. Yeah. It sounds awful, but it tasted delicious, and it made some interesting smells for the rest of the day.
Yeah. Whereas in Northern Europe, I think maybe they have fish on Christmas Day.
When I was in France, salmon. They'd have salmon on Christmas Day. So when I offered to cook my host Christmas dinner, they were, a bit confused why I wanted a big chicken.
And I'm sure I heard of there's some communities, I think in the US, where it's Chinese takeaway, Chinese takeout.
There we go.
Which you have on Christmas Day. I think that might have been I don't know. Anyway, I wonder what you do and what your household does at Christmas, and I really hope that maybe you can recognise what those things are. Yeah. Would love to hear about them.
Well, thank you, Ruthi, for bringing us Hallmark movies, whatever the quality of them, and leading us in that conversation about liturgy and actually how the structure of them gives us comfort and
joy,
familiarity. Wrapping that up, we have got we're going back to Hallmark movies now. Cate, you've got a bit of a game for us, I think, now.
Yes, well, so I've mentioned I'm not a Hallmark Christmas movie person, and I wasn't going to watch more than one. But what I have done is I've got a list of 5 holiday movies which are on Hallmark this year, 2023. So the Hallmark Channel. I've got the titles and I've got their kind of synopsis. And I need you to guess, based on the title, what you think the story might be.
Do you want to take... Shall we alternate?
Okay.
Or do we want to do it together?
Okay.
Well, what do you want to do?
Do it together.
Okay.
Let's be a
Hey,
team.
bestie.
Be a team. And listeners at home, you can play along. Maybe you've actually seen it. So, the first one is Christmas Island.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
I was thinking, I've seen this one, but I'm thinking Operation Christmas Drop. That's Christmas on an island. Not literal Christmas Island. I'm imagining this is one, someone has gone through a breakup, goes to visit a tropical island for Christmas.
And they're on their own.
Meets a handsome man with a surfboard or something like that.
But I bet that the person they sit next to on the plane is a bit of is an angel who sort of says, "Oh, you'll never know who you might meet on Christmas Island," and they end up bumping into somebody maybe from their past who's also there on Christmas Island.
The Christmas Island. When a snowstorm diverts Cate's private flight en route to Switzerland to Christmas Island, she must team up with an air traffic controller to secure her dream job as the family's pilot.
Okay. Golly, that's mood.
Okay, so the next one, A Merry Scottish Christmas.
This is going to be an American tourist who comes over to Scotland who is coming to find an ancestor or something like that and ends up having a Scottish Christmas and finds a Scotsman who's a bit rough and ready to begin with, but then she decides she likes the man in the kilt.
Do you think he's a laird? Do you think he's a laird of the castle?
Yeah, he might be. Secretly a lord, yeah.
Do you think they get snow? Do you think there's a snowstorm and they get snowed into the castle?
Yeah, there's got to be a castle. Yeah. And whiskey, of course.
And a stag.
Okay. When estranged siblings, Lindsay and Brad Morgan, travel to Scotland at Christmas to reunite with their mother Jo, a big family secret is revealed.
Oh, what's the secret? We'd have to watch to find out.
Yeah.
Have to watch to find out.
We got some of that, didn't we?
I mean, we said it was in Scotland.
You did, you got some of that. And I imagine if we watched it, there would definitely be some of those elements that you mentioned. Okay, so the next one is Haul Out the Holly, subtitle, Lit Up.
How are you spelling hall?
Hall is an H-A-U-L.
Okay, so I think they're moving house like a U-Haul.
Nice.
Maybe.
Or a trucker.
Yeah, a trucker's Christmas.
Haul out the...
Lit Up.
What was it?
If I told you that this is a sequel...
Oh my goodness.
Oh. That must be an original Hallmark one then.
Mm.
So maybe... or if it is a moving one, then there might be a baby or something like that. They've got to make
He's got a brand
Christmas.
new truck, but they got a baby now in tow.
Or a German Shepherd.
Hey!
Yeah, that was tricky.
Okay, so...
Yeah.
As the holidays approach, Emily and Jared, who I'm assuming are the couple from the
they are,
one,
and they've got a really great story. They fall in love gorgeously.
Yeah, I'm assuming in the previous movie, Emily moved to this town and met Jared, and they got together, and that was the story. Okay, Emily and Jared are looking forward to celebrating the holidays together again, this time as a couple. Emily, now embracing Evergreen Lane's uniquely festive spirit, is ready to work with Jared, Ned, Mary Louise and Pamela to make this year's Christmas celebrations the best yet.
Squad goals.
Even if being the HOA president's girlfriend doesn't stop the dreaded decorating citations.
No.
Whoa.
In fact, let's try and guess the plot of the previous movie based on this. When a house block on the block goes up for sale, it causes quite a stir with the residents. When the soon-to-be neighbours turn out to be holiday royalty, it looks like this year's competition is about to heat up. And as the welcoming committee prepares for new arrivals, the only thing is certain, this is Christmas. Evergreen Lane is going to slay, spell as in Santa's sleigh.
That's so camp.
So I'm going to guess that the previous movie, the conflict was about she moved to Evergreen Lane and didn't want to decorate her house for Christmas, but he, being the HOA president, was conflicting with her, trying to get her to.
Yeah, get Christmassy, woman.
Next one, A Biltmore Christmas.
A what Christmas?
A
Biltmore Christmas. Should I give you the first sentence and then you can see if you can work out the rest? Because A Biltmore Christmas.
Is it more the name of a place?
Lucy Hardgrove is a screenwriter
I
who
think I've
lands a
seen
job
this
of a
one.
lifetime when she's hired to pen the script for a remake of a beloved holiday movie. His Merry Wife, first filmed in 1947 at Biltmore House, which has long been considered a Christmas classic. So what's the rest of the movie?
I think I might have vaguely seen this one appear.
Oh, it's got
So
time travel.
Does she go back in time to when the original film was being made? And
Yes.
does she have, maybe
To
she has
discover-
writer's block or something, and then she falls down the stairs or something, or wakes up in the past.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, when the head of a studio isn't satisfied with the ending she's written because it deviates from the original's feel-good conclusion, he sends her to this house to research it. While there,
And
she
will fall in love
discovers
with someone there.
unwittingly discovers the ability to travel to 1947 to the set of His Merry Wife through the help of an hourglass. After shaking off the initial shock of this turn of events, Lucy embraces this as her chance to uncover the truth about the movie's original ending. While on set, she and Jack Huston, one of the film's stars, spend time together and become close. But her sudden appearance on set is a chain of events. Has set off a chain of events that puts the production in jeopardy. Before she can return to the present, Lucy must make things right or threaten to alter the future forever.
Okay, so going back to the Hallmark movie that I watched, Back to Christmas, they do not know how to handle time. And time travel and the physics of it all, even if they try to. And there was this weird bit where she goes back in time and she kind of takes it all within her stride. But then when she comes back to the present and everything has changed, she doesn't have the memories of what's happened in that past year, and she's got to play catch up.
So
and
what?
basically, because she's now in a relationship for a year, she's got no memories from that year of being in a relationship, which must be really awkward. Anyway, sorry. Hallmark movies should stay away from time travel.
Yeah. Okay, here's a final one.
Okay.
And this is the LGBT.
Yes! Now we can say
one.
Slay Queen.
So, Christmas on Cherry Lane.
Oh. Is this going to be a first time kind of thing with cherries and popping cherries? Is it going to be someone who's just come out and is finding how to be queer?
A young couple preparing to welcome their first child, an empty nester and her fiancé ready to start a new chapter, and a couple who unexpectedly have the chance to expand their family on Christmas Eve, celebrate the holiday as they navigate these turning points in their lives. And it has Jonathan Bennett, who was Aaron Samuels from Mean Girls, and Vincent Rodriguez III, who is in My Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, who was Josh. Not Josh,
I don't know.
the guy who she moves there to chase after.
Jonathan Bennett is in all sorts of... Yeah, he's doing a lot with sort of LGBT plus Hallmark movies. Because I think there was what... I think is he in Single All the Way?
Aww.
Anyway.
Might be. Yeah. So that was a movie
We love to see it.
About two men in love adopting a baby at Christmas.
That's
That was
cute.
lovely.
Holly.
Oh, I
Carol.
bet. Did I tell you, my niece was born on Christmas Eve, and I was so disappointed when they didn't call her Neve or Noel or include
Boo.
that anywhere.
Rubbish. Rename her.
Anyway, those are the 5 movies chosen by website Decider, which we're supposed to watch this Christmas on Hallmark.
Thank you very much, Kate. I will be looking for all of those, especially the time travel one, to see how bad the time travel is.
Yeah, honestly, from those synopses, I'm quite tempted to watch them.
We've converted her!
Oh,
I think I'd need to watch them with someone else
Yeah.
though, to kind of be able to riff off of it.
Thank you for that, Kate. So, check out some Hallmark movies. Let us know what you watch and what tropes you found in them. If you go to a Christmas service, see what tropes you could find there too. Let us know. And see what tropes are in our own Christmas Carol service offering later on this month. But a very Merry Christmas to all of you. It's been great to hang out again.
Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas!
Ho, ho, ho. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Vicars Watch Dibley. Thank you to Nat for editing our ramblings.
Any opinions expressed are our own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Church of England or any other organisation with which we are affiliated.
If you like our podcast, leave us a review, follow us on social media and share it with your friends. And, as always, bless you for listening.
What did Santa say to Mrs. Claus when he saw their Christmas tree?
I don't know. What did he say?
It looks okay, but you could spruce it up a little bit.
Hey!
Nice.
Not as dirty as I was
Not
expecting.
as dirty as you were expecting.